This is the Samsung Galaxy Book Pro 360, and I've been using it for the past week or so in attempts to answer a few very important questions, such as, is it overhyped? Is the OLED screen really that good? And most importantly, would I use this as my daily driver? My answer is probably not, and here's why. This is Luke with Digital Trends, and we're talking about the Galaxy Book Pro 360, the good and the bad. In fact, this commenter from our initial hands-on video had a pretty accurate prediction. They said, it really does seem too good, so I'm bracing myself for caveats. Well, you were right. There's a lot to like about the Galaxy Book Pro 360, but after using it for a full week now, I've definitely got some caveats. But before we get into it, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. And while you're here, leave a comment below. I'm really curious if you guys have used OLED screens on laptops before, because I'm gonna be going in depth on my experience using the screen on the Galaxy Book Pro 360. And as always, if you're interested in buying the Galaxy Book Pro 360, make sure to use that link down in the description below. So my review unit here is the 15-inch model. And just to be clear, this is the Galaxy Book Pro 360. So that's the 2-in-1 model, the convertible, which basically just means that it has a touchscreen and it has a 360-degree hinge. Just a couple things to start off. This model is quite a bit heavier than the other three at over 3 pounds, even including the 15-inch clamshell version, strangely enough. So the extreme lightness that those laptops were kind of initially sold on, it isn't quite felt in the same way here. It's still really thin though, even thinner than the Surface Laptop 4, and it really does feel portable because of that. And of the different color options, I know people will feel differently about this, but this silverish one here, known as Mystic Bronze, it's, in my opinion, the more boring of the two. It's kind of generic looking from that standpoint, and I even kind of like the all-white standard Galaxy Book a bit more. But after spending a lot more time with the Galaxy Book Pro 360, there are some easy takeaways here. The keyboard, first off, is great. I don't love having a number pad on the side, but it doesn't get in the way, and I'm sure there are some people that are really gonna like having that there. The touchpad I don't like quite as much. It's nice and big, and it does track well, but I found the click mechanism to be a bit too loud, and I noticed some palm rejection issues while typing, which was pretty annoying considering how wide this touchpad is. And then there's the build quality. It's not horrible, and if you've used any number of mid-range Windows laptops, this won't shock you, but there are a couple of spots that are creaky, especially along the panel lines, and especially along the sidewalls. They did a decent job with the lid, but the bottom cover here is really the big culprit because, as is shown elsewhere, it's bendy enough to click the touchpad from below, which is not a good look. Like a lot of convertibles, the screen is a little heavy and therefore a bit wobbly, which makes the inking experience feel a little weird, which is too bad for this laptop. And I just think the hinge in general feels a little bit too loose. That's probably not going to be a problem with the standard clamshell model. But check out my hands-on video if you want to get more of the basic details on these new laptops, because for now I want to get into some of the things I was able to test or even just notice after hours and hours of use. And the first thing to mention is the screen, of course. This OLED screen is the most important feature of this laptop because this is Samsung, the actual manufacturer of these panels, and the implementation here is special in a number of ways. First off, there's no extra layer here or anything like some other laptops that offer an OLED option have, and it feels just like a normal LED screen on a laptop, but obviously you notice the benefits of OLED immediately. I'm not gonna rehash the whole spiel, but obviously OLED image quality is far superior to standard LED on a technical level. The individually lit pixels produce incredible contrast, and even just the viewing angles are an improvement. The other important thing about this particular implementation of OLED is that it's a 1080p resolution, which is already rare in itself. There's no 4K option here, even on this 15-inch model, and I'm gonna come back to that. But I know of really only one other laptop that has a 1080p OLED screen, which is the ZenBook 13 OLED. And the benefits of using that lower resolution are twofold. You got price, and you got battery life. This is gonna be a cheaper way into OLED, obviously, because 4K panels are still expensive. But more importantly, this laptop gets phenomenal battery life, and not having a power-hungry and expensive 4K screen on here is one of the main reasons. You're gonna get well over a full day of work, upwards of 13 hours on one charge, and if you're doing something like just watching a movie, up to 17.5 hours. But of course, there's a downside to this resolution, and it's obvious, but it's the sharpness. I'll admit, it's been a while since I've spent a long period of time on a 15-inch 1080p screen, but it's kind of an eyesore, and as someone who stares at small black text on white backgrounds every day, the difference in resolution is definitely noticeable. And I don't know if the OLED is somehow making it worse, but I found myself squinting a lot and just wishing I was working on a crisper screen. Now on a 13-inch display, I really don't think this is a problem, but on a 15-inch, it's a bit of a buzzkill on what is supposed to be this laptop's most impressive feature. If you sit this next to the 15-inch Surface Laptop 4 and ask me which device I'd rather work on, there's no question in my mind I'd pick the Surface, standard LED screen and all. But we should talk about the actual image quality of the display here, which I tested with this, my Spider 5. As advertised by Samsung, the color coverage here is nearly perfect. 100% across the board, which again is rare in general, but extremely rare on a 1080p screen. The gamma though was slightly off, which isn't great for movie watching, and I really noticed just how oversaturated the color started to feel. Which is odd because Samsung has said that the Galaxy Book Pro 360 is sort of built for entertainment. It's the reason they stuck with 16:9, and I'm assuming it's a big part of why they went with OLED to begin with. And that led me to dig into the display options a bit more, where I stumbled upon the 3 other color modes that come in the box with the Galaxy Book Pro 360. Now, each of these different modes did actually improve the gamma and produced more natural looking colors, so that's good. Stick with the default for doing your photo edits and switch to one of these other modes for video watching. But one thing additional color modes are never going to solve is the problem of screen reflections. This isn't the brightest panel in the world, and it's fairly glossy. Combined with the solid black produced by the OLED screen, you'll be battling reflections from time to time. The system does support HDR 500 though, which promises 500 nits of brightness, but as we all know, Windows doesn't exactly play nice with HDR. You can't just flip it on and expect things to work. In fact, it's pretty much a horrible mess unless you're actually watching HDR content. But even there, I ran into another underwhelming aspect of this laptop, which is the speakers. They're loud enough for single person viewing, I would say, but if you sit back a bit, if you're watching with another person, they're just not loud enough or full sounding enough to really enjoy a movie on. If you flip it into tent mode, that does help a little bit because the speakers are located on the bottom of the chassis, which again, not ideal. But overall, I don't think it quite lives up to being the entertainment first device that Samsung wants it to be. The good news is outside of some of my issues with the screen, it's a solid laptop to work on. Yeah, 16:9 isn't preferred, but all in all, the Galaxy Book Pro 360 is a fine work computer, and it actually surprised me a bit in terms of performance. Samsung pushes the components pretty hard, and the internal temps do get a little high. But remember, this is a standard Intel 11th Gen U processor. Mine had the Core i7-1165G7, which only has 4 cores and 8 threads. And while we're talking about it, my config also came with 16 gigabytes of RAM and the Intel Xe integrated graphics. At this point, I've tested countless laptops with these Xe graphics, and the Galaxy Book Pro 360 beats them all and are even ahead of the Radeon graphics in the recently released Ryzen 5000 processors. Or put it this way, the graphics here are 35% faster than the Ryzen 4000 integrated graphics in the Surface Laptop 4 that I recently reviewed. It's also one of the very fastest in PC Mark 10 in this class, only trailing behind the newer Ryzen 5000 laptops. The Surface Laptop 4 comparison was one I kept coming back to, along with something like the LG Gram, because these are laptops that are extremely thin and use lower powered processors paired with a larger screen size. And you know, this is never gonna compare well against a fully spec'd up Dell XPS 15 or MacBook Pro 16-inch, but it was never really meant to. And yet, to my surprise, the Galaxy Book Pro 360 handles itself pretty well, even in difficult tasks like video editing. I use Puget Bench to test Adobe Premiere performance, which covers 4K video playback, exporting, and all sorts of other stuff. And I was surprised at how well this thin little laptop actually did. Despite having fewer processing cores, the Galaxy Book Pro 360 was actually 32% better than the Surface Laptop 4 at this exact test. The GPU score actually even slightly beat out the M1 MacBook Pro, if you can believe it. Now don't get your hopes up, even the fanless M1 MacBook Air was overall 25% faster at this same benchmark, which again is a smaller and cheaper laptop. The discrepancy between Windows laptops right now and the M1 MacBooks is still a problem that the Galaxy Book Pro 360 isn't really equipped to tackle. But with all this stuff, I come back to the actual experience of using this laptop, and I'm just left a little disappointed by the screen, and there's no getting around that. I really think Samsung made a mistake by not at least offering a 4K option on the 15-inch model. Now, I know some people out there are gonna gravitate towards this specific model for the S Pen support and touchscreen. Those aren't hugely important to me, though I will say this new S Pen is a big upgrade to the tiny one that came in previous Samsung laptops. On the other hand, I think I really actually would like the 13-inch clamshell Galaxy Book Pro. It has better port selection, it's thinner and lighter, and I think I'd enjoy the screen a lot more too. If I wanted to get in on the whole Galaxy ecosystem that Samsung is trying to sell, I think that's probably the option I would go with. Either way, the Galaxy Book Pro 360 doesn't quite feel like the crowning achievement I was hoping it would be. Instead, it feels like just another step for Samsung. It's moving in the right direction, but they haven't arrived just yet. Hey, thanks for checking out this review of the Samsung Galaxy Book Pro 360. Make sure to like this video if you liked the content and leave a comment below letting me know what you think of this laptop. Maybe some of these issues aren't as big of a deal to you as they are to me. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And while you're here, make sure to subscribe for more videos from Digital Trends.